Afternoon, citizens. Um, on this very hot and very muggy day, I hope you're all doing well, and at least you are enjoying the warm weather. Hopefully, um, I heard something the other day from, I read something the other day from Hackney Council. If anybody doesn't know, Hackney is a borough in north east London. Um, it's fairly inner city. Um, a bit, it's up and coming. I think it was a fairly poor area. Is probably being gentrified in some places, but nevertheless, it's one of those. Um, I think the ultra low emission zone. Um, I think it's included within that. I might be wrong about that, but the other day they somebody from the Hackney Council said something to the gist of um, the time is right for affordable road pricing. Now, of course, this is yet another conspiracy theory coming true. The idea of road pricing. Um, Sadiq Khan's plans are to extend the ULEZ all the way out to the outer London boroughs. I think all the way out to the M25, in fact. Um, and so that's being resisted by quite a lot of people, and which is a good thing. And people have been taking taking the law into their own hand, shall we say, by uh, um, taking direct action against the cameras. And this is, of course, shocking, as you can imagine. I'm shocked by this, as you might imagine. Um, but there's that it's something to perhaps to be uh, what would you say? Um, it changes the dynamic of things somewhat. Um, and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the idea that road pricing, this thing that we were told was never going to happen, and now, of course, the ULEZ extension is due to happen in August, and there's been much speculation about the, the the end goal of having all these cameras is for road pricing. Now, as my regular viewers will know, um, it's the surveillance application of this which is most disturbing to me. Um, uh, but we have become so inured, most of the population have become so inured to sort of blanket surveillance and unwarranted surveillance by the state that the idea that um, that this aspect of road pricing um, is believed by many just to be the thing that happens next. Now, um, leaving aside the surveillance implications of this, which are enormous, um, so we'll just put that to one side for the moment. What is interesting about that statement by Hackney Council is the idea of road pricing being affordable. Now, if the aim of road pricing and ULEZ and all the rest of it is to get people off the road out of their cars, then why would road pricing be affordable? If the idea is to get people off the road, surely the logic behind that is to make it unaffordable. I mean, why would they even suggest it being affordable? If it was affordable and the great bulk of the population who don't give a toss about surveillance would keep on driving and wouldn't worry about the surveillance and they would be able to afford it. And so it wouldn't reduce the traffic, it wouldn't reduce car use at all. So the idea of it being affordable is just ridiculous. It won't be affordable. It will be unaffordable. It would be expensive enough to make people not use their cars. So it would have to be punitively applied so that people wouldn't do it. Yeah, so it will be unaffordable if it comes in. It will be unaffordable. There's no question about that. The idea of it being affordable road pricing is just utterly illogical. There's no reason why they would do that. Um, they've managed to, in most people's eyes, they've managed to get everybody to accept surveillance and monitoring as if it's the most natural thing in the world, rather than an absolute fundamental violation uh, of our human existence. Um, so as uh, as I rail against this continually, um, it may be that the chickens are finally coming home to roost on this, and that people are beginning to realise the dangers of surveillance for its own sake. Um, as is usual with people, they don't actually object until it really hits them. In the same way that Parliament never invested in a sewage system for London until the MPs couldn't bear to be in the House of Parliament because it stank so much. So in that respect, ordinary people are no different from politicians. The most ordinary people are no different in that they won't act until it affects them personally. So as always, this is David Icke's totalitarian tiptoe. You get the ULEZ zone in the inner London boroughs, and you get congestion zone as well, congestion zone charging as well. Then you get ULEZ all the way up to the M25, and then once everybody's got used to that, then you say, well, we might just as well have road pricing, and you might just as well make it unaffordable in order to do what they want it to do, which is to get people out of the cars and off the road, and get people cycling and walking and going on stupid public transport where they'll be surveilled even further through their Oyster cards. So this is, to coin a phrase, where the rubber hits the road, really. This won't be affordable. It's designed in to be unaffordable. So people just need to be aware of that. Now, in the last few weeks, I've spent quite a number of weekends at home. And I've been getting, perhaps, this isn't that very often, but perhaps a little bored. The Jag's got something wrong with it. And it's a 25-year-old car, and nobody seems to know what's wrong with it. Nobody seems to be able to fix it. And so I do have my other car, I do have my little micro that's full up with all my tools and stuff. But this is an example of what happens when you lose your car, because I've effectively lost my car. I use my micro for work, so I haven't actually lost my mobility as such, but I've lost my recreational mobility. I don't ever just go for a drive like I used to. And I don't go for a drive as much as I used to, partly because the cost of fuel is more than it was. But I used to, if I didn't have anything else to do, and I needed to get out of the house, I would just go for a drive. Now, I haven't done that for quite a few weeks, a couple of months, in fact, because this has been an ongoing issue with the car. And so I've got a little glimpse into what it will kind of be like once road pricing comes in. if we allow that to happen. And we'll be sort of confined to our homes in a way. I mean, of course, we're not confined to our homes. We'd still be able to go out. We'd still be able to get our bicycle out and go for a bicycle ride. And people still do that now. And good luck to them if they want to do that. But I'm not a cyclist. I'm not interested in cycling. Although I have a close friend who is, and he loves his bicycle. But for me, my recreation, when I'm not doing anything else, I don't go to the pub very often, I don't go out to dinner very much. Um, that is one of my outlets for recreation. I go out and I explore the country, and I try and go to places where I haven't been before. Um, and of course, all that is going to be, considered to be beyond the pale. I mean, a few months ago there was, I don't know where it was, but I think it might have been Wales somewhere. I don't know what the reason was, but there was some sort of climate change, continued hysteria, and the police were stopping people in their cars and asking where they were going, and so as to whether or not their journey was essential or not. And I go quite a number of unessential journeys. Um, I travel around and I burn petrol and I add to the congestion purely for my own recreation. Am I a selfish bastard? Perhaps. You know, am I contributing to the end of the world? Well, they would think so. Um, I don't believe that's the case any longer, although I might have done at one point. Um, so I was thinking about that thing with the Hackney Council, and of course it always starts in one place and it spreads everywhere. Now it's like a flipping virus, to use an example. Um, and it is all about salami tactics. Take a little bit of freedom each time. Um, and of course, sometimes when the times when they can't use salami tactics is when they put a massive plant pot at the end of your road and then you can't drive anywhere. That's not a tiptoe. That's not a salami tactic. That's a major um, restriction on your freedom that they can't hide. But what they're hoping is that they can get enough people to accept the bullshit of climate change that they'll just accept it. Now, people are not falling for this anymore, so that's something to be um, thankful for. Um, but I was thinking again about what we do about this, and as I've said before, I don't think there's not much more mileage to be gained from doing more stuff online. Everybody who agrees with us already agrees with us online. But it's the people who aren't online, the people who don't look at the stuff that we look at. They don't look at the C40 cities, Agenda 30, Agenda 2030. They don't look at the 15-minute cities, the LTNs. Um, the idea that the aim is by 2030 that there'll be no air travel, for instance. That you'll be only allowed to buy 3 pieces of clothing a year. Their ambitious target for 2030 is no motor vehicles. No motor vehicles in 6.5 years' time. Now, people don't know this stuff. They don't know this stuff because they're not supposed to know this stuff. So we need to tell them, and we're not going to tell them online. We need to get out there. Now, when I do my stall in my local town, which when I started I was doing it on my own, and I had to make myself go to it. It was. I get up and I think, oh, I've got to go over there, and I've got to find a parking space, and then I've got to stand there for 4 hours, and And when I started, when I was doing it on my own, sometimes in 4 hours I only speak to 8 people. You know, one person every half an hour, and so it was a struggle to go. But then I got this other fella who came to help me, and that makes it so much easier. And it makes it easy in a practical sense because you can have a cup of tea or go for a slash or whatever it is, so somebody can look after the gear while you're gone. But psychologically, it's much better because you've got someone there who agrees with you and someone who can back you up if you get into a difficult argument, difficult discussion, who can come up with things that you might not have thought of, and you can do the same for them. Um, but having said that, I don't get any. I don't. I've had an argument with anybody. There's been a few little fractious little bits of conversation which are not which are easily handleable, dealable with quite easily. Um, and overwhelmingly, the response is people who basically agree with us. I mean, my focus has been recently, or our focus has been recently on the cashless society, but we've got to move it into um, 15-minute cities and low traffic neighborhoods and all that kind of crap. Because you'd be astonished how ignorant people are out there. They don't know anything. They don't know anything because they're not supposed to know anything because they look at the BBC and they read the newspapers. Yeah. But I'm getting more enthused about doing it, and I want to try and recruit some more people so that I can get 2 other people to do the normal pitch that we are doing in my local town, so we can do it, so we can go to the neighbouring town. And I was thinking that I might go to some London boroughs as well, try and do that as well, because they're going to be very much affected by it. Um, Now, I mean, uh, I'm not really affiliated with any groups. This is half the problem with our movement is it's so fractured and there's so many different people out there and so many groups to follow. But I would say that if you've got a group to follow, then follow them. But don't let that preclude you from following anyone else. And as far as political parties go, I mean, you might be, you might feel that the Reform Party has the best chance, or Reclaim, or the Heritage Party. Now, they're also fractured. But if we could build an alliance of people who broadly agree and to be in opposition to all this stuff, it doesn't really matter if we're not all under one banner. Um, I don't think loyalty to a political party is the way to go. That's how we've got into the mess we're in now. So I would, I would urge people to get out there, start your own store, just in your local town, your local village. Um, the like I say, the things that I'm most concerned about are the cashless society and the road pricing and the 15-minute cities. But you might have other things that you're more concerned about. You might, I mean, I've avoided the discussion on the vaccines because it's science-based stuff that I don't know enough about. But if you feel confident enough to discuss that, and then discuss that. But we have to make sure that it's, we do have to educate people because, you know, so many people think that this, in the words of Ron DeSantis, they act as if all this stuff worked, that the lockdowns worked, that the vaccines worked. Um, and, that's very, at best, in question. You know, um, and people just, we mustn't allow people to think that this is all in the past. It's all behind us. All the lockdown and the COVID and all that stuff is all in the past. We know that this is Act One. and we know that it was all designed to soften us up for what's coming next. But our biggest problem is lack of knowledge and apathy. Now, I strongly feel that apathy can be cured by demonstrating with evidence what is actually going on and the implications of things. Now, there will always be the majority of people who never want to do anything, and they never want to stand up and be counted. They just want to get their heads down. They want to do their own thing, and they want to go on holiday, and they want to have their big screen telly and whatever else it is. But if we can start demonstrating to them that all of those things that they think that they're going to have and that are not under threat, if we can demonstrate to them that all of those things are under threat, we might make some progress. I mean, I genuinely feel that we're pushing an open door here. And it never seems like that we make a breakthrough, a massive breakthrough. And perhaps that isn't where it's going to be. It won't be a sudden collapse of the narrative. I think it will be a general um, crumbling of it, brick by brick. Because my feeling is that, for all those people who, the reason they don't want to talk about COVID and all the mandates and all that stuff is because they know there was something off about it, but they were invested in the mainstream stuff, and they don't want to admit it. But they know something was off, and they know that our society did things that it shouldn't have done. But they just don't want to. They just want to forget about that. You know, mostly because they were complicit. Mostly because they know that they didn't stand up when they should have done. But our task is not to. Our task is not to make people feel public guilt. Our task, I think, is to make people feel private threat so that they know all the things that they have and all the things that they want are under threat. And there are people out there wanting to take this stuff away from them. But I do think that, talking to people in the street is the best way of going about it. You can't be silenced. You can't be, you can't be censored. Um, Most people who come up and talk to you kind of agree with you. There are people who'll never engage, never engage. There are people who think you're a conspiracy theorist, and you just have to take that on the chin. Um, Youngsters are particularly difficult to get through to, but you can do. Um, the last time I was on the stall, or time before last, I think, just spoke to a couple of very nice, polite young lads, and I approached them, and I was expecting them to just sort of avoid me, and then maybe be evasive, and then sort of take the leaflet out of a sense of politeness. And they weren't. They were actually properly engaged. And one of them was um, obviously he was studying science and that kind of stuff. And he said, "Well, what do you think of electric cars?" And I was saying, "Well, I thought they were dead end. he was agreeing with it. And there was another guy who, he had his headphones on. This is another thing, is that everyone always listening to something, and they got headphones and looking at their phones. And I thought I was just going to give him a leaflet, and he stopped and he took his headphones on. Oh, what's this? And I told him all about a cashless society. And he said, well, I normally pay for things on my phone, and maybe I shouldn't, And so I told him what I had on the leaflet, and I encouraged him to speak to his friends about it, and I gave him a wad of a leaflet so he could give to his mates. So the young are not unreachable. The older types, people my age and older, are, and particularly a lot older than me, don't like the cashless society for just reasons that they've lived their whole life using cash and they don't want to stop now, which is entirely reasonable. But it is the young people we've got to get through to, because they are the worst offenders for paying for everything, um, with their phone or card. Um, but we're having for instance, the other day I got a check from a customer. It's an elderly woman in her 80s. She's 85 or something. She gave me a check. It's a very nice lady, but I mean, they've shut my local branch in my town, so I have to go I have to go about 12 miles for another branch. And I've been so busy at work, I couldn't go, so I had to phone. We phoned her son up, who's dealing with her finances, and he said, look, I said, do you think you could just, if I take the check back, can you transfer it? And he did, and of course I'd also gone onto Barclays website, and against my, you know, every impulse I had, I downloaded their app, because it's supposedly you can take photographs of check, and of course it didn't work. So, I wasted 3 days, 3 or 4 days um, before taking the check back. So it took me a week to get paid. So this is how they do it. And I was at a glass merchant's, and I went in there just to get some greenhouse glass, and there was a sign on the thing said, "Well, we're not taking cash anymore." And I said to the woman there, "Look, we've got to keep cash. It's really important." She said, "Well, look, they've shut all the banks, and they won't allow us to pay money into the banks." And so this is how they do it. They just make it so difficult for you to handle cash that then everyone stops using cash, and then the government can swoop in and say, "Well, nobody uses cash anymore, so I might as well just get rid of it." But this is how we do it. This is how it's done. I mean, but I wanted this to be sort of a kind of positive post. This, I mean, as you can see, I'm rambling a bit, so I haven't got anything scripted to say. But I wanted to just encourage people to, nothing's inevitable. Nothing is inevitable. I mean, some of the in Dulwich recently, they um, uh, they scrapped plans for a low traffic neighbourhood in Dulwich because of local opposition. Protest does work. It really does. Um, and Southend Town Council said they'll never introduce a low traffic neighbourhood. These are only little outliers, but there's something. There's something, and it does show that protest does work and resistance does work. Um, but I do think that we do have to speak to the great bulk of the population that are not engaged. We don't have to engage them all. We just have to engage enough of them. Um, and we have to highlight them to what is actually going on and what they stand to lose, because then they're completely unaware. Most people have no idea what a low traffic neighbourhood is or a 15-minute city is. Mrs. X the other day was speaking to an air hostess, and and she was trying to encourage Mrs. X to become an air hostess. And Mrs. X said to her, "Have you heard about the Agenda 2030? There'll be no flying by 2030." She had no idea, not the tiniest idea. So this is what happens: people whose their entire financial um, viability is based on something that could be just taken away from them in 6.5 years' time. They're complete their complete livelihood. Just no, we're not doing any flying anymore. No more flying. No more aeroplanes. No more pilots. No more air hostesses. And you've got to do something else now. But here's some universal basic income, so you don't starve to death. But you've got to toe the line and have your jab and all the rest of it. But you don't have to do anything. So, you know. But it is worth remembering that this isn't over by a long shot. We sort of think, tyranny is always better organised than freedom. I mean, it's just the way it is. It's just the nature of it. Those who have plans, uh, they set their plans against us, over a long time, and as they do that, they try and close off all the exits, all the avenues where you can escape until there's no more escape. And of course, us people who believe in freedom, the nature of us is that we don't want to get involved with planners. We just want to do our own thing. But there comes a point when you do have to get involved, and it's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth it. You feel much better if you do something. You know, you know, don't scare off the normies. Don't start talking about flat Earth, even if you believe that. Don't start talking about. Avoid talking about David Icke, because as right as he's been about anything, uh, there are certain people that you just don't want to scare them off. You just want to highlight to them what they're going to lose and all those things they thought were guaranteed for the future, and they're not going to have because somebody out there was trying to take it away from them. But you feel much better once you've done it. And try and recruit some people, so that you can do a rota of. See, I do my stall every other weekend. Now, if I got two other people to do it, I'd only have to do it once a month. But what I'd like to do is continue to do it every other weekend, but do it in a different town. And then so we can try and build on that. Yeah, and try and encourage people. If you're meeting out, if you're doing a stand in the park or libertarian drinks or anything like that, you know, be bold. Start asking people. Start guilt tripping them into helping you. We're not going to. The only way this succeeds is if we do nothing. And so many people are wedded to the idea of doing absolutely fuck all and just moaning about it and moaning about, oh, well, there's nothing you can do. Well, there's nothing you can do if you don't do anything. But if you do something and you get enough people to do something, there's nothing they can do. The future they think they've got for us isn't the one that we are going to have. We need to put our stake in the ground. Say we're not having this. We're not having it. And it doesn't take many people to resist to make them back off. So get out there and get some people to help you. And, we can do this. We can do this. So anyway, be not afraid. We can prevail, and we will. So stay free, everybody.